Hey witches, welcome to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy, a magical living podcast for the busy witch. I'm Morgan, eclectic witch of almost 25 years, Avalon priestess, and busy witch. Here we'll talk all things witchy, from current metaphysical happenings to my busy witch tips and tricks, and everything in the in-between. This podcast is my personal journey, filled with my knowledge, opinions, and unique way of looking at the world. Join me as I weave the magical and the mundane in every episode. Hey witches, welcome back to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy, and I'm really excited about today's topic. I am going to be talking about working with deities, and this is something that I love teaching about. I have a lot of knowledge about, and so I do love sharing it, but it's something that I have really fun personal stories about as well. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. We're going to go over some nerdy stuff, some backgrounds onto deities, some general info, and then we'll get into my experience with working with deities. So I did put up a story on Instagram a few weeks ago about the podcast and what listeners would like me to cover. And I actually had a couple of different people ask about working with deities. So I immediately wrote it down because I said, okay, if I have different people asking me for that, then there must be a need for that, or there's a question out there right now about that. So I do know that a lot of my Inked Spirit Coven members listen to the podcast. If you are an Inked Spirit Coven member and you are curious about working with deities, head back in our lesson archives to May 2022. The entire month was on deities. So a lot of today's podcast episode will come from that. Not all of it though, because that is a perk of being an Inked Spirit Coven member, is that you can go back through past lessons and get the Book of Shadow pages, watch the replays for the lessons, and do the workshops, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the information in today's podcast is coming from that lesson. So let's start out super easy. What is a deity? A deity or a deity, they're often pronounced both ways. I've always said deity. I don't know. So it's a god or a goddess or a divine being or a creator or someone who is revered as supremely good or powerful. So there's religions that are monotheistic, which is where there's one God. The most notable one, of course, is Christianity. And then there are religions that are polytheistic, meaning more than one God. So many witches and pagans do honor gods and goddesses from different pantheons. And that's another key word here. Pantheons are cultural groups of deities. So you have like the Norse pantheon, which would be Thor, Loki, Freya, Odin, all those. Or you have like the Greek pantheon, Greek and Roman, which I think a lot of us are familiar with because we probably learned Greek and Roman mythology at some point in school. So that's, Zeus, Hera, Aphrodite, Mercury, Jupiter. I mean, like, depending on if it's Roman or like, because Zeus and Jupiter are the same pretty much, but one's Roman, one's Greek. But that's the Greek and Roman pantheon. Egyptian. So if you have heard of Anubis, Bast, Isis, any of those are all Egyptian, of the Egyptian pantheon. Celtic is another very popular one. So Celtic would be Hecate, Persephone. The Morrigan is Celtic. And then Celtic also overlaps with Welsh in some places because you're all kind of looking up in that UK area. So you have a lot of overlap there as well. But that's a very popular one for witches and pagans as well. Or a deity is like a general divine feminine goddess and a divine masculine god, which in Wicca is like the mother goddess, and then you have like the oak king and the holly king, or you just have like god and goddess to represent, divine masculine energy, divine feminine energy. But that's generally found in Wicca. But that easily transitions into the next part, which is I get asked all the time, Do you have to have deities if you are a witch? I've had a lot of witches who are like, I do completely understand a God type figure and a goddess type figure to help have that balance in the universe, divine masculine, divine feminine, but I don't really resonate with any specific gods or goddesses. Like, can I still be a witch? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, you can still be a witch. You do not have to have deities to be a witch. So, witchcraft is a practice that can be incorporated into any spiritual belief path. Or you can just practice witchcraft and have it void of a deity or divine spiritual being. Okay? So deities come from your spiritual path, not witchcraft. Do a lot of witches incorporate their deities into their witchcraft? Absolutely. This is really found in Wicca, which is just a branch of paganism, but they weave witchcraft in with a goddess and a god figure. But overall, you do not have to have deities in order to be a witch. If you are a witch, you absolutely can incorporate your deities into your witchcraft practice and weave the two together. Okay, so I hope I made that super clear. Now, deities in paganism work a little bit different than deities in other religions. So in many religions, and most of us who make the transition over to paganism or witchcraft, maybe I can't say most, a lot of us came from Christianity. And there was something in Christianity just doesn't click with us. So in many religions, most namely Christianity, deities or a deity, because you have like God, you have Jesus too, but they are worshipped. So they are prayed to for help, for guidance. You hold this God up on a pedestal and you worship him or her, but him. In most of the mainstream religions where there is one God, it's a God. And then that God or that deity is seen as being better than people, honestly. Like, you strive to be God-like. You strive to be up on the level, but you know somehow that you will never, ever, 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 ever be on this level because that level is only reserved for God. Okay, so that's how it works in a lot of other religions. And even in religions that have multiple gods, they're still worshipped. They're still held up to a pedestal, and you still basically pray to them when you need their help. So you are taking your wish or your desire and you're handing it over to them and saying, give this to me, please. And then you're sitting back and waiting for that deity to answer your prayers and to give you what you asked for. Okay. Now, in paganism, you work with the deities. You establish a relationship with them first. That is the most important thing. Then it is a give and take relationship where you work with the deity to achieve your desires or for things that you want. You work with these deities in your spells, in your rituals, and it is 100% a give and take. And that is something that a lot of witches making that transition over from something like Christianity into paganism, it's something that I don't know if it gets lost in translation or if they're just so used to getting down on their knees, praying to a god to help them, that they come over to witchcraft and they do the same thing with the deities here. And this is a huge light bulb moment for a lot of people, especially in 2022 when I did this lesson in the Ink Spirit Coven. I was told later that there were a lot of light bulbs come on for people because they never realized that here in witchcraft, you keep your power. Okay, you don't ever give your power over until, unless the situation calls for it, okay? And sometimes you are at the end of your rope, you have no idea what to do, and you do surrender to a higher power, okay? And that's when you're working with the deities, but you're still working with them, but you're surrendering over to them for guidance. Like, I don't know what to do anymore. Please help me, okay? But generally speaking, you have a relationship with these deities, and it is a give and take. So you honor them. And that is a big way. That's part of that give and take. Like, you're asking them for something, like something, help in a spell, help in a ritual, but you must give them something in return. So this is why a lot of witches put up altars, either for a specific deity, or they add deities to their altars, because this is a way to honor and respect the deity by giving them offerings, or honoring them, lighting incense for them every day, or, giving flowers to, like, putting flowers on their altar, or whatever it is that they like. But that is your way. You're saying, hey, I'm serious about this relationship. I'm serious about working with you. And this is how, like, I'm going to give you my time. I'm going to give you this offering. These are the things I'm going to give you. And I'm going to continue to nurture this relationship so that in the future, if I do need help, I can count on you to be there for me, and then we can work on that together. So I hope that really makes sense. And that's the difference between paganism, working with deities, and paganism versus a lot of mainstream religions, is you are maintaining your power. You are creating change. You are performing magic, but you are asking deities for their guidance, or to help you build energy, for their energy, so that you can build it up during this spell. So that's the main difference. And that's one of the most empowering things about witchcraft, is you maintain your power, and you have the ability to make your desires happen, and to cast spells and get the things that you want without having to just kind of turn it over to a higher power and being like, okay, I prayed, now where's my stuff? You have the power to affect that change and put your will onto it, okay? So a couple of things to keep in mind when working with deities, and then we will be getting in how to discover your deities, and then my personal experiences. So number one, keep in mind that I don't like to use the words always and never. So I will avoid it here by saying it is very important that you should, and I hate using the word should too, but you definitely should establish a relationship with a deity first before asking for something. It's just common courtesy. You have to understand a lot of these deities, the ones that witches really are drawn to, or some of the mainstream ones that witches work with, not all of them have been deities their entire life. Some of them, like Aphrodite, Zeus, they were born deities. A lot of them were regular people who, through their life and story, they inspired people with certain attributes. For example, Rhiannon is one of my matron goddesses. She was a quote unquote normal person who went through some shit in her life, and therefore she had lessons to share with people, and she has certain energies that she can share with people. And over the years, she was eventually raised to goddess status. Okay, so you have to think of them like a person. If you have some rando coming up to you asking you for shit, don't you kind of get like a little put off? So establish a relationship with a deity first before you just go start asking shit of them. And I will say this, never, ever, ever demand anything from your deities. That will not go over well. I promise you that. Do not demand things. Treat them as you would like to be treated, with respect, with courtesy, and just always keep that in mind, okay? So that's number one. Number two, a deity can absolutely ignore you or refuse to help or refuse to work with you. It is their right, okay? So do not push the situation, especially if you get a clear spiritual door slammed in your face. don't pursue it anymore. Okay. You would be pushing their boundaries. You would be pushing their buttons, and they're not going to take it nicely. Okay. Number 3, don't pantheon hop for your spell or intention. It's just disrespectful. And what I mean by this is, for example, let's say you want to cast a love spell and you ask Aphrodite for help, and the spell blows up in your face, or Aphrodite just flat out is like, no, I'm not helping you with this. So pantheon hopping would be taking that same spell and going to Venus in the Roman pantheon, or heading over to Freya or Frigga in the Norse pantheon, or heading over to Lilith, who's a dark goddess of like love and lust and desire. So it's just disrespectful. If you have a relationship with a deity and you ask them for help and they're like, no, screw you, taking that same request to someone else can be seen as disrespectful. I think if there's some of you who are like, oh, but I have multiple deities from multiple pantheons, I can get that, but you have to go by gut, honestly. You have to go by gut. Because it might be that the deity wasn't the right deity to ask for that. Deities definitely do specialize. Okay, so like Aphrodite is the goddess of love. So if you want help fighting a court battle that's coming up, you wouldn't necessarily go to Aphrodite. So if you did go to Aphrodite and she was like, no, I'm not going to help you with this, then taking it, if you already work with the Greek pantheon, then taking something like that to like Athena, who's a warrior goddess of strategy, that would be better. So that would be the only thing. I hope I didn't just confuse you absolutely more. But that does lead me to number 4, which is mix pantheons at your own risk. A lot of eclectic witches may have relationships with several deities from different pantheons. Like when we get to mine here, I heavily resonate with Celtic, but I also have pretty much just a Welsh goddess thrown in there. Celtic goddesses. I have worked with Greek goddesses before. And then I have technically a Christian goddess as one of my goddesses. We'll get there. So goddesses or deities will let you know if they play well with others, 100%. So a lot of witches can set up one altar, have all their deities on it, and everyone plays nicely. Some deities like their own altars. Some deities like to only be worked with by themselves. They won't work well with other deities. So it's as you establish this relationship with them, they'll let you know what they like, okay? And then number 5, which I think is super important, especially for eclectic witches, stay in your lane when it comes to closed religions and cultural appropriation, okay? There are many closed religions, such as Indigenous people, Native American, Voodoo, Hoodoo, Santeria, Romanian witchcraft, etc. This is not a comprehensive list. These are just the mainstream ones. And then there are also other religions which are not completely closed, but you do have to have some kind of conversion or training or acceptance or something into them, which is generally Hinduism, Buddhism, and then Gardnerian or Alexandrian Wicca. So there's a difference, and I want to state here too, there's a difference between honoring and trying to work with, okay? And I want to make that known, because you can definitely honor the energy of, for example, the land that you live in. Like I live in the Southwest. I live in Tucson. So there is a lot of Indigenous people, Native American lore and history and energy just surrounding me, okay? So I will pay honor to that energy without asking them for anything. That is just, I am like, thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for the things growing on my property. Thank you for these. That's just honoring. I'd never ask them for help. I never work with them. It is me honoring them and their presence and how their presence incorporates into my life and allowed me the life that I have here. That is just honoring, and that's paying respect, okay? I don't work with Native American deities because I am not Native American, okay? So that's where you draw the line. If you are not Hoodoo, if you have not grown up in a Hoodoo family or a Voodoo family, if you are not Native American, then trying to work with energies and deities of those closed practices is not cool. It really is not. You can read a lot of information on the internet, but taking it to that next level and practicing things from a closed religion is just not cool. Okay? So that's my last thing to keep in mind when working with deities. Now, how do you discover your deities? This is what a lot of people ask me. I'm going to give you some basic things, and then hopefully my own personal experiences will help you even more. And so I'll share those after. So you can explore your interests to see if a deity connects. For example, if you absolutely love the ocean and you feel at home there and you are just, you love the ocean, maybe you can work with an ocean deity. You know, maybe Aphrodite, she is the goddess of love, but she was born of the sea. So take a look at your interests. If you have a love of horses, then Rhiannon or Epona or even an aspect of the Morrigan might really be interesting to you. So take things that you already have an interest in and see if there's a deity that is attached to that interest. And you'll almost feel it you'll feel it in your heart. You'll feel that connection. Something just feels right. It's like a puzzle piece snaps into place. Okay. The next one, look out for animals, signs, symbols, or anything like that showing up. I like to call these synchronicities. So if you keep having an animal show up, you keep having a symbol in a dream, you keep having the same little message pop up for you over and over and over again, that could be a deity trying to contact you. All right. Go to your dreams and guided meditations. That is a huge one for me. You may dream of a goddess or a god, and then you have to look them up, look up attributes or things in your dream. And those dreams do feel different as well. You just wake up going, whoa, that was not a normal dream. And then guided meditations are really good for establishing connections, either new connections with deities, or that's how I personally build my relationship with the deities is through guided meditation. You can openly ask. So you could be like, okay, I'm open to working with a deity. I would like someone to let me know who is open to fostering this relationship with me. And then you just have to remain open for the signs, the synchronicities, dreams, messages, things like that. And then you can also choose a deity that you want to work with and attempt to connect. Again, they have the right to ignore you. So you have to walk this fine line. I have read things where people say, set up a huge altar for this deity first so that they know that you're 100%, serious about this relationship. And so what happens if you spend money on statues and this and that and other, and you set up this huge altar and there's crickets on the other end? You're out a shit ton of money. So I feel like you have to walk, if you're choosing a deity to work with, you have to almost walk this fine line between how do I get their attention and let them know I'm serious and I would like to work with them, and how do I back out if they say no? Like, have I invested too much into this if they come back and are like, no, or if they just completely ignore me, So you have to do what's right. I personally don't think you should set up an entire altar for someone. If you don't have a relationship with them, you can maybe light a candle, maybe print a picture from the internet or something. Like, start out small and really cheap. And then if they are like, oh yeah, this works for me, then you can start to build on that altar. But that's just my personal advice. Okay, so my journey so far with deities began in England. I knew leading up to that, like my origin story with witchcraft started in high school. I read a book on Wicca, and it really resonated with me, at least from the standpoint of having a god and a goddess, because that was one of my biggest questions growing up was, why is there a god? Why does he not have a wife? Why is it like everything in the world comes in masculine and feminine, like that balanced energy? Why is there only like one god and he had a son? And why did we kill him? I don't get that. I had lots of questions. Anyway. So a first book I read was on Wicca, but I was, 16 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no questions. This was late 90s. I had no one to ask, no one to turn to. I just had books to read. So I kind of put things on hold for a little while until after I got out of the small shitty town I'm from and got married. And I knew I had seen this picture of a goddess figure. It's a symbol of the goddess drawing down the moon. And I fell in love. And so I bought a necklace and I started wearing that because I knew I really resonated with divine feminine energy. Like for me, I'm good with masculine stuff, but I really felt a calling to goddesses. I just had no idea who or what or anything. So again, kind of stayed in this limbo area. So we were in England and I had a dream one night of a woman on a white horse, and she was wearing a green cloak and she had bright red hair. And I was standing in the forest alone, and she rode up to me and she said, "Follow me." And all of a sudden this other horse appears and I get on the horse with her, and she takes me through the woods to the shore to a beach. And she said, "Now you're home." And I was like, whoa. And I remember waking up from that dream. I even have goosebumps now telling about it because I remember it was so vivid. So that's how I tell you, like when they come to you, when a deity comes to you, you will not forget it. The dream feels different. You will still remember it with extreme vividness 25 years later. And so I made notes because I didn't really know. So I was talking to some of my friends in this pagan group that I was a part of. And I was telling them, I was like, I had the craziest dream last night. And I told them the dream, and somebody just perked up and said, "Oh, that was Rhiannon." And I'm like, "What?" And they were like, "Rhiannon. And she's a goddess. She came to you." And so I was like, "What? They can do that?" And they're like, "Yeah, they can do that." Because you have to understand, I was 21, 22 years old at the time. So I started researching Rhiannon, which led me to the Avalonian tradition, which is, there's a couple of different paths of the Avalonian tradition. But the minute that I began reading about not only the Avalonian tradition, but of some of the goddesses associated with it, that was it. Those puzzle pieces inside of me started to click into place. And so I set up a small little altar for Rhiannon, and I said, "Okay, I got your message. I'm here now." She has been with me ever since. She is what I call one of my matron goddesses, or you can call them patron goddesses. But just so you know, P-A-T in Latin means man, and M-A-T means mother or woman. So if you have goddesses, they're actually matron goddesses. If you have gods, they're patron gods. So there's your nerdy Latin lesson for the day. So Rhiannon was the first goddess I ever worked with. I still honor her to this day. The next one that popped up for me was Bridget. And this was a weird correlation. So every year, starting in beginning to mid-January, I would feel like I had a fire lit under my ass. I would start to get so much shit done, so much stuff done. I was motivated. I had high energy. It was crazy. And so that's when it took me a little while. It took me a couple of years, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. Until finally someone is like, "So you get super motivated at Imbolc every year?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I would say that because Imbolc's February 1st. And I'm like, "Yeah, it starts maybe like beginning to mid-January, and like it really fuels through February, March." And they're like, "Have you ever looked at Bridget?" And I'm like, "No." So I started researching Bridget, and again, another puzzle piece fit into place. So I added a few things for Bridget to my altar, connected with her, and she was like, finally. Deities also have their own personalities, 100%. That's another thing that you have to get used to when you're working with different ones. Some of them are kind and gentle, and, when they have a message for you, it's almost like they try to whisper it into your ear and put you on a cloud and surround you with rainbows to deliver this message. Some of them smack you in the head with a sword. I mean, that's what happens. And some of them, honestly, In fact, a lot of the deities that witches think are cool or, oh, I want to work with her, such as Morrigan or Hecate, they'll disrupt some shit to teach you a lesson. So you have to be prepared when you start a relationship with a deity or when you decide to devote yourself to a deity. You have to understand their energy and how they work, and you have to accept that. Okay, so for me, Rhiannon is very stern. So when she has lessons, when she has messages, she stands her ground. And it's almost like she waits for me to be a toddler that throws a temper tantrum and then gets it out of my system and then comes back around. And she is there and she's firm and she is standing her ground. She's there to teach me whatever that lesson is. Bridget smacks me upside the head and lights a fire under my ass. Literally, like I want to say literally, it's not, but like I get so motivated. And that's how I know, like when all of a sudden I do have these fires lit under my ass, it's Bridget. So that's her energy. Next, and this is one to be completely honest, like I'm going to be vulnerable with you all today. I'm struggling with this right now. So a few years ago, I woke up one morning and our entire backyard was full of ravens. It was creepy. I'm not going to lie, you guys. It was something I had never seen before. At the time, the business was in our Arizona room, and which sticks out the back part of our house. Our backyard was surrounded by ravens, and they woke us up. And So at that moment, I went, oh shit. Okay, let me research ravens. So of course, the first deity that pops up when you research ravens is the Morrigan. And at the time I was reading and I was like, so she's a warrior goddess. She's there to help you fight. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm preparing for a fight. Oh my God, was I preparing for a fight? Not to get into too many details, but a absolutely massive metaphysical supplier, internet metaphysical supplier, had changed the name of their subscription box to one that was basically ours. And this owner is not, can y'all tell I'm trying to choose my words carefully? She's not new to bullying small businesses, okay? She's not new at all to it. She attempted to trademark the word Yule at one point so that no other metaphysical people could use the word Yule. Yeah, like, who the fuck does that? Anyway, she did it. And so we had to get lawyers involved to send her a cease and desist. And this is still, to this day, one of the hardest battles I've ever fought, spiritually, physically, like all of it. But we won. In the end, she doesn't even have a subscription box anymore, so yay us. But that was the fight that came up, and it was literally within a few weeks of these ravens filling my backyard. And so I was like, holy shit. So from that point forward, a Morrigan altar went up. I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you, because she helped me fight this horrible fucking person. Anyway. And so this is where my struggle comes into play now. Okay, so last year I was doing a class on Morgan Le Fay, who is part of Arthurian legend. I've always been drawn to Arthurian legend, which was another reason why I was drawn to the Avalonian tradition, because there's crossover between Avalon and Camelot, and it's just so beautiful, and it's stuff I've always been interested in. So I'm in this class learning about Morgan Le Fay as a goddess, and everything made sense. Like, it felt more at home than I ever had been with the Morrigan. And one of Morgan Le Fay's symbols is a raven. So to this day, and I mean, this was last year, I still struggle with, oh my gosh, was that the Morrigan who came to me, or was it Morgan Le Fay? Because there is a lot of overlap between the two. And Morgan Le Fay's energies are all about empowerment and standing your ground and being yourself and fighting for what you believe in and all of this. So I eventually, like recently within the last 6 months, I took down my Morrigan altar and I put up a Morgan Le Fay altar. And I will say that things have felt much better for me, but I still struggle. I'm like, oh my God, am I turning my back on the Morgan? Because that's not really a goddess you want to piss off, you know? So there still is a struggle within me of like, did I make the right decision? Was I misinterpreting the signs the whole time? But at the moment, I am comfortable in the fact that either, and both of them, Morgan Le Fay and the Morgan, are shapeshifters. So that's another thing where like they're almost one and the same for a lot of people. So it's like, I don't know why I struggle with it, because the Morgan, or her warrior aspect, was there to help me fight this fight that I had to fight. But now that I don't have to fight, maybe she has shapeshifted into Morgan Le Fay, or maybe Morgan Le Fay shapeshifted into the Morgan, because I needed that warrior goddess to help me with what I was going through a few years ago. So that's one of my things now. I do have, like I said, I have a separate altar set up for Morgan Le Fay, because as I dive deeper into my Avalonian studies, she is the Queen of Avalon as well. So I feel like she almost needs her own space to be honored. So that's where I'm at with that. And then finally, a few years ago, I had a softer, I didn't know who it was, but it was a very soft, compassionate energy popping up. And it was a woman. I would do guided meditations. I could see her in the shadows, but she wasn't coming forward. But she was very kind and loving. She had a little bit of like sex appeal to her, and I didn't really know who it was. And then the synchronicities started popping up. Mary Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, Mary Magdalene. Her name came up after I opened myself, because I said, okay, I'm ready to work with whoever you are. I'm ready to work with you. So I need you to tell me who you are. And I opened myself up, and that was it. In 1 week, I heard Mary Magdalene's name like 4 or 5 times. And I said, okay, so there's your synchronicities. That's when I was talking earlier about synchronicities. So I started working with Mary Magdalene. This road has been very long. It's lasted a year, and I still am figuring out how to work with her. But I do know the lessons she's here to help me with, the side of myself she's here to help me with. And technically, she's a Christian deity, because she is believed to have been Jesus's wife if you get more into Christian mysticism. Yeah, so those 4 currently. I still have Rhiannon and Bridget on my altar, my main Avalon altar. And then Mary Magdalene has a statue on that altar now, because she works very well with them. And I do have a separate altar for Morgan Le Fay as the Queen of Avalon. Now, over the years, I have even worked with Aphrodite. She came to me in a dream. Actually, no. She came to me in technically a vision. I was in the bathtub and just chilling out, relaxing, eyes closed. And I had a vision of a woman with long blonde hair, seashells surrounding her, and she was like butt-ass naked. And so that's when I realized that was Aphrodite. And for that moment in my life, like that period, I worked with her. But I had tried to foster that relationship after she helped me with what I was going through at that point. And she was like, no, I'm good. Like, I helped you how you needed to be helped, and I'm good now. And then she, went away. So I have worked with deities for specific things, but she did come to me in, I guess, technically a meditation vision. I have worked with Lilith. This actually started when we had a goddess subscription box way back in the day. And I was opening myself to different goddesses for the different months boxes. And Lilith was one of the goddesses I wanted to work with. The connection was so strong with Lilith and I that I just continued to foster it. And she still, I have an altar in our bedroom, and she was on it for a while. I have thus removed her picture from it, but I still burn Lilith candles there. I still know her energy is there. But I don't work with her directly necessarily anymore after she helped me through that part of my life. And then in the Avalonian tradition, depending on which path you follow, so there's a Sisterhood of Avalon path, There's a Kathy Jones path, and then there's a Mara Freeman path. There's a couple of other ones now, but those are the three like OGs when it comes to the Avalonian tradition. Each of them have their own deities. A lot of them overlap. But in an attempt to, work the Sisterhood of Avalon path or Kathy Jones's path, I have worked with Caradwyn. I have worked with Ariane Rod. I've worked with Blodwydd. I've worked with a couple of different goddesses. None of them really, truly stuck with me, but I have honored them or, at least put stuff up for them at certain times of the year, tried to work with them. But for me, an absolutely 100% structured Avalonian tradition path does not work for me because I do have, I have Rhiannon, I have Bridget, and like Rhiannon, I believe is found in all of them. Bridget is not. She's only found in one or maybe two of the Avalonian tradition paths. Morgan Le Fay is found in some of them, not found in others. Mary Magdalene, not found in any of them. So, it's just been evolving to my own thing as, I've been doing this for 25 years. And that's where I stand now. I've worked with several other goddesses for different purposes or different time periods of my life. And then there was a mutual parting of ways. I think in the past, there are a few goddesses I've tried to work with and it just didn't click. So you just kind of have to move on and accept, that this isn't the right deity for you. I do get asked a lot if I ever work with gods. I don't. Me personally, I don't. I honor a divine masculine energy, but I don't work with any gods. I have tried in the past. It went horribly wrong. I think personally for me, like when you look at my chart, I have something like 6 or 8 planets all that are divine masculine areas in my chart. And so my divine masculine energy is already there, which is why I think I've been drawn so much to goddesses and working with that divine feminine energy is because that's how I achieve balance in my life. Being so divine masculine in energy, I work with divine feminine energy to keep me chilled the fuck out. That's how I rationalize it, at least. So this episode went long today. I told you guys I love talking about deities. I have so much experience with different ones. I have good experience, bad experience. Like I've told you today, I have goddesses I work with now. I have some that I worked with for a short period, and I have some. At one point, everyone tries to work with Hecate. Okay, at one point, I think all witches do. We love the appeal of that dark goddess. She's the queen of the witches. Like we love that idea. And for some people, it's amazing and it works. For me, it did not. I worked with her long enough to put her kit together for our shop. And I tapped into her energy then. And it was literally at the end of it. I was like, hey, do you want to keep up this relationship? And she was like, nope, you were here to tell my story. You were here to get my energy out there. You were here to help get me out. And we're good now. Thank you. And she just peaced out. And I'm like, oh, okay. Woo, that was fun. So I hope that I was able to help you all today, especially those who've been questioning, how do I connect with deities? Do I need deities? What do I do? I hope that this episode was very helpful for you. And I started out by saying that the majority of this podcast came from the Ink Spirit Coven lesson on deities. It did. And that is why I would love to have you join the coven. We are working on rewilding your inner witch this whole year. We're working with the element of air right now. And for the month of May, we're doing spell writing. And we're doing a lesson on that and a workshop. I do teach the lesson, give you Book of Shadow pages as a lesson plan. We do a workshop every month that coincides with that topic as well. And then we have weekly magical activities, monthly magical activities, daily discussion questions, all kinds of fun stuff. And it is facilitated all by me. So if this sounds amazing to you, head to inkedspirit.com to learn more and join us. You have access to all of our archives, which is 3 years now, I think, worth of stuff. So you can self-pace it and then join us for the live lessons coming up. I want to thank you all for listening. for giving me a platform to share my knowledge and my experiences, for giving me amazing ideas for podcast episodes like this one. So definitely hit me up on Instagram and let me know if there's anything else you would like to hear, and interact with, the post on this. Let me know if you really like this episode. And if you do like Busy, Gritty, Inked, or Witchy, please subscribe, share with your friends, all that good stuff, so that the algorithms, there's always algorithms everywhere, sends Busy, Gritty, Inked, and Witchy out into the ethers for other witches to find. So I will see you all again soon. Bye.